I'm Talia and today I'm going to be doing a demo for my Academy students here at Blue Tit. We're going to be doing a half head of highlight and a little creative colour through the ends. This is my model Kira and today we're going to be doing a half head of foils through the top and then going to be popping a little bit of strawberry blonde through the underneath for Kira, just to have like a little bit of flair on that colour. Yeah, so I'm going to mix up some H bleach. I'm going to use 20 vol. Yes, I'm going to do 1 to 2 with 20 vol through the top there. So yeah, I'm really excited to do it and show you guys this technique. It's going to be quite a classic technique, so it's definitely something that you can adapt to salon work. We're going to be going for quite a blended look through the top and then obviously doing that creative colour through the underneath, which I'm going to do as a toner at the end. I can't reiterate enough how important it is you guys using the right brush when you're doing highlights, especially if you're wanting something that's close to the root. If you're working on precision, it's really, really important that you do use the right tools. Something that's really important is that your brush is fine enough so that it's not going to be too messy when you're applying at the root. So this brush, I don't know if you guys can see, but the bristles are quite close together on those ends there. And this is different from a lot of the brushes that even do look like this. These are two very different brushes. Even though they look really similar, it would just be so difficult for you to get anything precise with these. And this brush is also a lot firmer. So when I'm like bending the brush on my hand, you can see the difference. I'm gonna start with our diamond. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna comb all of the hair backwards. And then I'm going to take my parting from the centre, and you really want to make sure that parting's nice and neat. And this is going to give me my starting point for my diamond. You want to make sure that the diamond's in the centre of the head. You can kind of see where the hair starts to fall backwards, and that's where I judge to take the point of my diamond. So I'm going to go from there, and I'm going to go diagonally back. And again, remembering that your diamond needs to be a foil width wide, yeah? And then I'm just going to do the same on the other side. And then I'm going to go to the back of the occipital bone. And then again on this side, just to meet that point. Just make sure that that's all really nice and even. That's a foil width wide. It's all nice and even each way. So I'm going to section that off now. Just going to keep twisting the hair. And that section's nice and tight through there. So that's our first section in. So then I'm going to go from the point of this diamond to the back of the ear. Now, if I were doing a full head, I would be sectioning these two sections as well, but we're just going to be doing a half head today. So my next section is going to be from the recession of the hairline here. We've got a little bit of an uneven hairline. It can be a little bit trickier to see exactly where the recession is, but a good way to judge that is just where you can see these little baby hairs through here. I'm going to put my finger where that recession is there, and then I'm going to follow with my pintail comb through to my finger. And I'm actually going to be doing slices through the top here. So I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to take my slices really nice and fine. But with my foil, I'm just going to place it in this hand here, and then I'm going to use my comb to just push in underneath the hair there and pull that foil down. And then I use my fingers to just really press the foil into the curve of the head. And then I'm going to take my brush, and I'm just going to paint on there like that. And what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that I'm getting all of the darker hair and I'm not touching the blonde. Something to definitely be aware of as well is the amount of folds that you're doing. The more folded that the foil is, the more tricky it's going to be to place the next foil on top of that. And I'm going to be subdividing in between each slice. And you can see that even before I've subdivided, my sections aren't very thick. They're still really nice and fine. I can still see my comb underneath the section. That's a really good way of being able to judge how thick to take a section. You always want to be able to see your comb through it. Then I'm going to go again, placing my foil into my hand and then using my comb to push that foil into the root. I find that this is the best way to get the foil nice and close into the root. Now I start painting the bleach slightly further away from the root, and then I get in a little bit closer when there's less product on my brush. And then I'm just going to use this end of my brush here, just so that then I can get really precisely onto the pieces of dark hair around the pieces of blonde. And then I'm just going to fold my foil in again. And then when you bring your comb up, you want to be using these two fingers to pinch along the top of the hair here and use my comb to drag the section away from the hair, yeah? And then I'm making sure that my foil goes right the way to the root there when I'm folding it. And that's what's going to stop any bleeds. Now, there's a reason that I'm folding the foil on this side as opposed to the other one, and that's so that this foil is out of the way for my next section when I come onto it. The consistency of your bleach is something else that you definitely need to be aware of when you're trying to place foils so neatly. The consistency of your bleach isn't just something that we think about when we are talking about the effect that it's actually going to have on the hair. It's also something to be really mindful of when you're thinking about how tight you can get those foils. If the bleach is really thick or if the bleach swells, then it's going to push the foil away from the root of the hair, and it will also mean that you can't get them nice and flat like this. And now I'm going to be taking my foils on the angle of the hairline. I'm going to be following the hairline up, yeah? And around the front, I'm actually just going to do little baby lights so then I know that the blend around her front hairline is really nice. This is going to give you a softer regrowth and just a softer result overall. These hairline foils are by far the most important part of this whole service. If you get those wrong, the whole thing is going to look bad. So I'm just making sure that they're really nice and fine. And I'm making sure that I'm going from corner to corner of that hairline. I'm just going to clip that up and out the way. And then with my comb, I'm just going to bounce my comb through the hair. And that rhythm of bouncing the comb through is what's going to get you really nice, even results. Paint on there. And again, I'm just pivoting again. And the way that I pivot is I make the section slightly wider here and slightly finer here, so that then when I take a section across the top, it's still nice and even, but it means that my angle is changing as I go up the hair. And again, I'm just folding on this side of the foil. I'm not folding on this side at all. That's just going to allow the oxygen to get into the foil, and it's going to mean that my section's clean for this one. So I'm just going to leave a little section out here for dimension, so that then when the blonde hair on top lays over it, you can still see some darkness underneath. And what that means sometimes is if you're leaving dark, it can actually impact the blonde in a much better way. So the blonde will look blonder against the dark hair. So now I'm just going to go straight back through to the parting, and then I'm going to carry on with my slices after that. So I'm going to do one more baby light through here. And again, I'm just folding the foil on this side so that then it's clean for my next section. And I'm going to follow that diagonal from the hairline right the way through this section. I'm not going to be pivoting it at all. So yeah, and then I'm just still being really careful that I'm not getting too much product on there. If you were to get too much product at the root, what you could do is you just wipe off your brush like that and then go back in and just guide the product away from the root there. And that's just going to stop it from bunching up. So yeah, that's what your section should look like once you're finished with that. Can you see that all of those foils are really nice and neat in there? I know that they're not going to slip, they're not pushing against each other, they're just nice and tidy, and they're also off your client's face. And it's really important to remember what you've done on the last side to make sure that they're all really nice and even still. So I'm going to go in corner to corner here. Now you might notice that when you do this, there's a little gap in the hair here. Quite often a client's hairline will kind of dip around here. That's totally fine, just foil through it. Now sometimes if the hair is too fine, you might struggle that the foil might slip a little bit as you're painting it on. I would say to combat that, just keep a grip of the foil with these two fingers. Can you see how I'm pushing that against her face there? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my brush here and I'm going to swap my hand placement so that it comes up to the top of the foil here, and then I'm going to paint it down. That just means that I can get a really firm grip on the foil at the top there. Yeah, so I'm happy with that. Then I can let go. I know that the foil is going to stay in place. And then I'm just going to fold my foil up, making sure that I'm meeting the hairline with that fold. And then I'm just going to fold on this side here. And I'm just making sure that I'm taking these really nice and fine. And notice that I'm not subdividing here, I'm just doing them back to back. That's because I don't want there to be any gaps around the hairline. So I'm going to move on to my final section now at the top, and I'm going to be leaving that part out for dimension. By this stage of doing highlights, you're probably in a little bit of a swing of it as well. You'll be used to the amount of sections that you need to take, the amount of thickness that you need to put in each section. You'll kind of be in a little bit more of a rhythm. And I'm just still using the same technique as I have throughout, popping that foil into my hand and then using my comb to push against it. Pushing my fingers into the foil so and it's nice and tight to the head. And just starting painting just off the root and then pushing that product in there once there's a little bit less product on my brush. And I got it on my finger. Right, so I'm nearly done now, and you guys can see, like, as I get further towards the end, the foils get slightly smaller, and again, that's just because I've taken that on an angle. What I tend to do is I check the back. They're normally ready to rinse by this point. I'll get them rinsed and then I'll leave my client to chill. And before I get the back rinsed, what I do at the back of these foils here, I don't know if you can see, but they are just over the top of this back section. You can just see that they're kind of overlapping with the back section there. What I do to avoid getting those foils wet when I'm rinsing in sections is I just fold them away from that back section so that they're not in my way. Now you want the foil to look like the colour of the inside of a banana. So that's looking pretty perfect to me. Right, I'm gonna get the back of my foils rinsed. Colour, we've done a half head of highlights and I also added a little bit of creative colour through the mids and ends. I am so pleased with this colour. I think it looks incredible. If you guys like this colour, definitely keep an eye out for the courses that we've got on here at Blue Tit. We're always happy to welcome externals, and don't forget to like, follow and subscribe.